Today's episode is titled Republicans versus Democrats and Who We Want to Win the 2024 Election. I'm Micah.
And I'm Pat, and we're glad to have you back here.
Well, this is our dog Faye as well.
Oh yeah,
we won't forget Faye again. It's a one-time thing. So yeah, you want to pick it up, Pat?
Yeah. So as we know, it is Friday, so the election is coming in. What 4 days now? So we felt like we needed to put some content out in regards to who we want to win. I don't even know if I want to say who I'm voting for, because I don't even know who if I'm going to vote first off. But I think we kind of wanted to talk about some of the issues that have us torn on this total divisive country and this divisive voting, and because I just feel like it's not as binary as people want it to be, in my opinion. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we live in an age right now where, as a society, we're more divided than we've ever been. As brothers, sisters, friends, more divided than we've ever been. Something I've mentioned to you over the last year. I guess I've lost about 4 people in my life who I would say became radicalized by one of the parties, and now they view me like I'm a Nazi. And these are people I spent many years with, to include one, I've known for 15 years. Met him when he was a teenager, loved him like a little brother. And, one of our ideas, kind of like we talked about before, for a title of this program is Politically Homeless, as it is something I think that really, that's how I feel. I feel like I'm politically homeless. And to give you a quick background, right? First time I ever voted was for George Bush when I was, I don't know, a teenager, 20 years old, something like that.
I was too young to vote for George Bush.
There you go. Yeah, old fogey that I am, yeah. But first one was for George Bush. And then after that, I didn't vote again until 2020?
No, you voted in 2016.
Yeah, 2016.
That was
all these years, because neither candidate was ever someone that I felt represented my morals and my values. It was always the lesser of two evils. And the reality was I couldn't do it. I couldn't pick either one. And it's crazy, right? Because those were the good old days now, right? Now we're in a place where both sides seem really bad. They seem really, really, really bad. Corrupt on levels that I've never come across in my life. I never would have expected.
I think the far spectrum of each side is like that.
Well, you say that, but our representatives are currently representing those far sides. That's how I think.
Some, not all. I think it's a good proportion of, but I do feel like the far sides of each party, even though they're the smallest percentage, talk the loudest.
Absolutely.
Therefore, they think that we look at these far left and far right issues, and people on the other side think that represents the whole side. And that's not the case. I think you have a lot of middle of the road, moderate Democrats, moderate Republicans, moderates. Those are the base that are going to determine the election. I mean, so you could, on each side, no matter who runs on each side, whether it's Herschel Walker, for example, running for Senate in Georgia, who has no political experience. He was a football player for Georgia, but he had the base of that far right that we're going to vote for him no matter what. Same thing with the Democrats. I mean, Joe Biden, if he was in a coma, and with 24 hours to live, would still get votes on the Democrat side. It's just how it is. And
please forgive me interrupting, but I think we could probably all agree that it's possible he has been in a coma.
Hey, it's very
for the
possible.
Last few years.
We don't know.
Yeah, at least the last year or so, at the very least, right? Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm very torn. I think we spoke about this last episode. I grew up in South Carolina. Was very conservative for what I thought. But now, I'm very centrist, middle of the road. But I think what I do know is I will not be voting for Trump. I know that for a fact.
Okay.
My opinion is that there have been too many people that have worked with him that have come out and said, oh my God, I wouldn't vote for him ever. He is just the most existential threat there is to the United States, to the world. And a lot of people that, it's funny, Trump respected and thought so highly of and said we're the greatest people in the world. Now they're the dumbest people in the world. And so it's just those people didn't become dumb from serving with Donald Trump. I think that Donald Trump misjudged and miscalculated how smart they were. And if they didn't follow his lead, they become idiots. And that's my opinion. So I take those people's perspective wholeheartedly. And then if we want to talk about January 6th, we can say that's just a whole reason why some people would never vote for him. But that's just my thoughts. I haven't decided if I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. I'm not sure. I think it's going to be a game time decision on Tuesday because I don't like early voting. I like going to the polls on election day. But I don't know. I will show up because I do believe in voting down ballot. But I don't know. I might leave that blank or I might write myself in for all I know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
let me know if you do. I'll consider.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here we go.
Virginia. 2 votes for
Patrick.
Yeah.
Mifflin came in third.
Yeah.
You know?
What are your thoughts?
Real quick, let me just go back to what I was saying before about George Bush, the first person I ever voted for.
Sure.
Then I didn't vote at all until 2016. I voted for Bernie Sanders. I was a Bernie supporter all the way. That was a really tough time for me. I remember watching the debates, right, and seeing Joe Biden just get annihilated. He just looked like an ancient fossil, and I'm watching all these debates, and I'm watching, right, everyone's voting for Bernie, first state, one after another. And then I start watching the news, and every media outlet started saying the same exact thing, Pat, like they were scripted. Only Joe Biden can beat Donald Trump. And that trumped everything. Yeah, so basically, everyone repeated the exact same thing. Only Joe Biden could beat Trump. And it was the news, then it was the podcasters, exact same statement. And I remember thinking, how in the world could you compare those two people? You had Bernie Sanders, who I will admit, if he got voted in, we'd probably have to vote out some of his socialist policies once he was done. I agree, absolutely. But, I was a big fan of Medicare for all. Really shocking how this country couldn't get that together. Won't even allow people to vote on it. But anyway, Bernie, what I loved about Bernie is Bernie could just sit and talk. He would do literally multi-hour town halls where he's just talking. And he was human. He was very relatable. Joe Biden is a crook. He was a crook. Everything about him was a crook. You look at his entire history of racism, and I don't like talking about that, but literally racism, talking about black people create a jungle. If we mix whites and blacks in schools, it'd be like a jungle. You got lying about, marching with MLK and all sorts of other, just one dishonesty after another through that man's career. And, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was he was going to take money out of politics. That would have changed this country forever, potentially the entire world. That would have been such a massive shift. Joe Biden, he promised nobody anything. And all of a sudden, it was Joe Biden and I remember when that happened, it broke something in me, Pat. It felt like democracy wasn't real. It felt like all you had to do was get the right media people saying the same phrase, and it spread like wildfire. And that was it. It just felt like the Democratic Party made sure who won that. That's how it felt to me.
But did it work, though?
What's that?
Did it work?
It ended up being Joe Biden,
and
not
did he beat
Bernie
Trump?
Sanders.
But he beat Trump.
Yeah, he did beat Trump. But that's kind of the whole point, is Bernie might have as well. The difference is we had an incredibly, what I would say, one of the most corrupt people we've ever had in this country as a leader. You look at that man's on live, hundreds times recorded lying about everything humanly possible.
Kind of like Donald Trump, but neither here nor there.
Yeah, but Bernie wasn't that guy. Bernie's not that guy. even if you don't agree with all his policies, I viewed him as an honorable man. That was how I looked at it.
I think he's totally unelectable. I don't think the way he could
You have
never.
Kamala Harris. She's 1,000 times more radical than Bernie ever is. The difference is,
I disagree.
yeah.
I disagree. I think she's, her history, when she was the district attorney in, I believe it was San Francisco, was very, that's the big talking point for Republicans, when she was the, incarcerations for marijuana and stuff was very heavy on that. But I think she was in the Senate very far left, but I just don't think anyone goes as far left as Bernie Sanders. And I don't know. I just think the Democratic Party knew that if we put this guy up there, he's old, which, I mean, everyone's old. I feel like in politics these days that runs for president. But I just don't think he could have ever won over the amount of moderate voters to win. That's my opinion. But to the point, I guess they were saying, was Joe Biden the only one that could beat Trump? Well, so far, he's been the only one. And in 4 days, we're going to find out if that still stands true.
Of course, if the Democratic Party had just changed out the name in 2020, Bernie Sanders is the only one who can beat Trump. Everyone would have gotten on the wagon because that is vote blue no matter who. That's the whole thing every single time. I think it would have been identical. And then there's no telling what this world could have been if that man would have been. Yeah. Anyway, so then we get 2024. Who did I vote for from the red side? Ron DeSantis. So I went from Bernie Sanders to Ron DeSantis.
So you've already voted?
Oh, no. This was for the Republican representative.
For the primary.
Got it. Primary, exactly. I voted for Ron DeSantis.
Got it.
Yeah. And, I know a lot of people really have problems with him, but a lot of that I think is due to people misrepresenting really a lot of the stuff that he's done. But that man he's created the blueprint as far as I'm concerned. If you're a Republican and you follow the values and you believe in the values of the Republican Party, strong immigration, strong focus on the family, Ron DeSantis, treating people for who they are, awarding things to people based on merit, right? Ron DeSantis is your guy. He's removed every racist law you can possibly imagine in his country, in his state, that gives one race an advantage over another. He protects kids against the dangers of gender ideology. He's done everything the Republican Party claims to stand for. He doesn't just say he believes in it. He's implemented law after law after law in his state. If that man had become the Republican representative, if he had applied that same blueprint to America, we could fix the entire world. We would have a chance of getting this thing back on track as far as I'm concerned. And then real quick, as someone who watches a good amount of, Democrat media, Republican media, some of the guys that I've liked on the Daily Wire, out of all those guys on the Daily Wire, the same thing happened in 2024 that happened in 2020. Everyone said the same thing on the red side. They said Ron DeSantis has no charisma. One after another, Pat. It was just like 2020 for me. One person after another repeated it, and that was it. And it was over for him. And now it was Trump. There's no one else but Trump at that point. So a very difficult time because it feels like democracy doesn't feel real, I guess. It feels like either side has the ability to control the narrative to such an extent that we have so many sheep on each side that you sheep. They whatever you say, Ron DeSantis is unelectable. Boom, that's it. They'll all repeat the same thing. Joe Biden is the only person who can beat Trump. They all repeat the same thing. And what happens is, on either side, whether you're Democrat or Republican, we're having leaders that they don't represent our values. They say everything, but you look at their actions and you see that they don't represent us. They certainly don't represent me. So that's a little bit more information about where I'm at. It's been a really difficult time because, again, politically homeless, Pat. That's where I've been for a long time, and a lot of people are right now. And then you probably come back to the whose side is worse thing, and do we want to jump into that?
Well, I just want to make a point, kind of what you were saying. It's interesting that I remember in 2016. I'm sorry. Let me go back. So when Biden was still the nominee this year, uh, the talking point seemed to be if either side had a different candidate, they would win in a landslide. That was all I heard. So if we could have just gotten rid of Trump, Haley or DeSantis, they were kind of like the runners up, would have beaten Biden in the landslide. And the thing with, because Biden was so old, did all of his gaffes, well, one side got switched out, Joe Biden. And now you still look at the polls going up to election day, it's about as close as they could be.
I would have blue no matter who.
Well,
that's why.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, I would have expected, after Harris got the nomination, the polling went through the roof, and she got all this support, and then you can see how it's just started dwindling right back down. And so, maybe it's not as simple as that. Trump, with all of his flaws, if I were to make a bet, I would probably bet on him winning. I think he's going to win. I don't know. It'll be very interesting. And let me just say this: what I just don't understand. I've watched election coverage since I was a kid. Every 4 years, and it seemed like except for what I guess it was 2000, when it was Bush versus Gore, where they had the whole thing with Florida, and that took all that time. But other than that, every election winner was determined on election night or early in the morning.
Not Trump. Trump was the same. When Trump was first elected, it was the same thing. I didn't know who was going to win. And when I woke up, it was Trump.
Yeah. No. My point is, but we had the results when we woke up the next morning.
Oh, yeah. Yep, we sure did. Yeah.
We didn't have the real results until days. It was days after in 2020. And now I'm already seeing reports in these swing states. They're saying Georgia, Pennsylvania, they're saying, hey, it's going to be days before we can count all these votes. How is that possible? How is it 2024 and we can't count votes any quicker than we did 20 years ago? We're using electronic balloting. The paper ballots are pretty much gone, I believe, in most states. I've voted in Alabama, I've voted in South Carolina, I've voted in Virginia now. Like, everything's always been electronic. Why does it take so long to count votes? Because that is where the conspiracy theories come from. Not saying they're right or wrong, but as soon as you take too long to do something that should be very simple, that's when the conspiracy theories come. And that is when people are going to be like, oh, it's rigged. And I feel like whatever side loses, there's going to be some lawsuits, and that's going to be challenging. It's ridiculous. And I cannot believe we've come to this point that it should not take this long. States should be able to certify these votes as soon as they come in, and that we should have results no later than Wednesday morning. I
agree. Absolutely. Yeah, the fact that we don't have this down by now is definitely shocking. It really, really should be. So why don't we go into maybe some of the issues with each party?
Sure.
And then we can kind of talk about it. Because for me, I'm one of those people, holy God, it's a giant creatures landing on me. For me, I kind of juggle it all in my head. And depending on what day you ask me, I sometimes have a different answer of who I believe should win. Not who I want to win, but I try not to think of just the short term. I'm trying very hard to think about the long term. It's not just about the next 4 years, even though it feels like that. It feels like right now we're in an age where each candidate is so, they feel like possibly the worst versions of each party, and to such extent that people are so upset after 4 years of either one that no matter what, they're willing to vote in the other side. And I'm definitely concerned that I could see that happening over and over and over again, where each side feels they just don't represent the real morals and values. They make so many mistakes, or they lie so often, both sides, that when it comes election time, everyone just wants to vote them out, right? It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter who it is; they'll vote anybody out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so where should we start first, issue-wise?
Well, what are your issues with each side? I'm interested to hear this.
Well, it's pretty extensive, right? It's tricky which place to start. But if you happen to be watching this, just know I'm going to give it to both sides. So
Equal opportunity.
Absolutely equal opportunity. So I will say I'm going to start off with the Republicans. And if you're a Republican and you happen to be watching this, that's because I actually have a much longer list of frustrations with the Democrat Party, which is why I'm actually going to start with the Republican Party. So if you're Republican, bear with us. It'll be worth staying to the Democrat side, I promise you. So let's start off. If you were to talk to a lot of people, I'm a big Sam Harris guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sam Harris will tell you January 6th is really all it came down to, period, right?
I think that's on the mind of a lot of people.
Absolutely. It trumps everything. Hate to use that phrase, but yeah, it does. It overrides everything else. It doesn't matter. Nothing else matters whatsoever to so many people but January 6th. And I get it. It was the first time we've not had a peaceful transfer of power. Now, you'll also hear that, Donald Trump obviously refused the results of election, and that Democrats don't do that. That's only a red thing. If you're one of those people right now, you're out of your mind. I think I was just telling you, I was telling maybe my sister, I think I was telling my sister, someone put together like a 24-minute compilation of Democrats basically saying the Republicans won illegitimately throughout the years, one after another, after another, after another, after another. So that stuff happens on both sides. So anyway, if you're thinking just the Reds do that, you lost your mind. But the whole fake elector scheme that Trump was involved in, and trying to basically have Mike Pence throw out the votes and basically have a whole slew of fake electors come in who would then put their votes towards Trump. Trump had already got that all settled. He'd gotten all the people. He'd convinced them it was all correct. He'd had them all meet and figure everything out. He had everything ready to go. If Pence had agreed with what Trump did, we might have seen our real civil war, because we would have been potentially in a place where Donald Trump won now because of this, but he didn't at the same time. I can't imagine what this world would have been in. And as far as I'm concerned, in that one moment, Mike Pence was a hero, irrelevant of anything else about him. He was a hero. Absolutely did the right thing. So again, January 6th, it's a big one. It's huge, right? Now, you could probably say easily on the other side of that, there are so many suspicious things that you're very tempted to think that Democrats are undermining every election, and that's going to get worse and worse as time goes on. And I think there's a really good argument to be made for that.
We can't say they've undermined any elections so far. Let's be fair.
Sure, but we have the video, people stuffing ballots in boxes, for example. Well, they went through the courts. It was not successful.
Yeah.
That's really what it's got to come down to.
That's what it came down to.
Absolutely.
Every court case that Trump, we'll just use Trump as the that attempted, was all shot down every single time, 100% of the time. Yep. So it's funny.
Whereas Trump, he did try to steal the election. 100%. 100%.
So, but I still think, though, and J.D. Vance has said, and it's a good talking point for him, because when they ask, because I think he was one of the people that said he would not have certified. But bottom line, Trump left office and Biden came in office. Now, all the stuff before that, not saying that wasn't okay, but the bottom line, Joe Biden was president for 4 years. So the system worked. It was tested. We realized how difficult someone could make it. And so now the worry is, what happens if he loses again? What is he going to do next? Because I don't believe if he loses in any capacity, he will not go away. And there's going to be, you don't think so?
I think if Trump loses, there's a great chance that he is as close to disbarred from the Republican Party as possible.
I'm not disputing that, but I guess I'm saying, like, if basically what happened 4 years ago. I believe there's going to be even more court cases, and I think he's already set in motion stuff. I mean, he's on Twitter or Truth Social, whatever, and already claiming there's fraud in Pennsylvania and stuff. I mean, so he's already setting the precedent of there's going to be that something's going to be delegitimized if he loses. If he wins, everything's going to be perfectly fine, sunshine and rainbows. Yeah, so he's just a sore loser. Bottom line.
Trump actually just filed a lawsuit in the last couple of days. I was just reading about it yesterday, and I was so appreciative of it. So there was that CBS 60 Minutes interview. I believe that's CBS, right? Where I guess if you were watching it at the time, you saw a question that was asked to Kamala, and she had this standard, ridiculous word salad nonsense answer.
That's typical for her.
Yeah. Then when you saw it re-uploaded on YouTube, they'd swapped out her answer for a completely different one, Pat. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, I saw it.
That was... How is that not election interference when you've got news agencies completely lying to protect one candidate? You don't like the way a candidate answered it, you swap it out and put a different one. Fox was just sued not too long ago, and they lost a fortune for being dishonest. Is CBS going to face something like that? It was funny because yesterday, Pat, I was thinking about it. I don't know what came out of my mind. I was driving, and all of a sudden I was thinking, these dirtbags are going to get away with stuff like that.
But I think I don't know.
Trump's suing him for $10 billion right now for election interference. And good for him. I hope to God he gets them. Because, Pat, we become one of those awful countries. Once the media is completely lying for one candidate to include doctoring videos for them, and the majority of all the stations are Democrat right now, we get into a really, really dangerous place soon enough if we give our news agencies the ability to lie and get away with it.
I want to set this picture for you right now.
Sure.
So when we say doctored, I think we have to be very careful because...
Not on this one.
But it's not like... So there were two different answers to the question. Are we on the same page? Right? So she answered the same question two different ways. And one was uploaded and one was kind of thrown away. Are we on the same page right there?
No.
So the
answer... I don't know if it went down like that, but it seemed to be that they didn't like the first version, so they had her answer again.
Okay. All right. So, yeah. But she answered it. She gave two different answers. Right? I mean, there's clearly video clips. So my point is, all of these interviews, I mean, like, are edited in some capacity. I mean, I don't think it's fair to be like, oh, well, they edited this clip. Why is that wrong? I mean, we're doing this podcast. We're going to do edits on here. If
of course, but the difference, right? Let's just say you and I, if people are watching us, right? Maybe we're live or something like that. I don't know if it was quite live, but
it wasn't live.
Yeah, but it'd basically be if people are watching us and I ask you, what your favorite, that's a tough one. If I ask you how you feel about anything, man, I'm struggling with this one. I just don't know how it comes out as anything but dishonesty, because we're not showing people the truth. We're showing people a lie at this point. If I ask you what your opinion is on our governor, for example, and you just say terrible things about him, and that doesn't go well in ratings, and then when we upload that video to YouTube, and all of a sudden you have a much better answer that makes you look much better, that's lying, Pat. That is pure dishonesty. That's what we're talking about here.
I can understand. I can understand where you're coming from, but what was when 60, because it was a 60 minutes, so I'd have to look at what did 60 Minutes put out on television? What was the original clip?
Well, that's what I'm saying. The original clip was the word salad. It was ridiculous. And then they replaced it with a mini half word salad version.
Yeah.
So she rolls, but
I don't know. I don't see it as big of a deal as you do. Was it kind of dirty? I can understand that. Like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said this. Let me change this answer. I got it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I mean, uh, it's it seems very low on the my give a shit meter when it comes to everything else that we should be worried about. It's just my opinion.
I disagree with you 1000%. This is how we mislead people in America currently.
I think
When the media gets away with lying and being dishonest for one candidate, that's dangerous, Pat. I'm sorry, we have just so many sheep in America, and it's just so easy to mislead people and put people down the path.
I think a bigger deal would have been, and I'm not trying to say CBS was okay in anything they did, but I think a bigger fish to fry, which they were fried, was Fox News and the Dominion.
And they were fried.
They were
But
fried.
that's the whole point I'm making, right? The
It
Reds
was,
didn't get away with it.
but
Now,
I think that was a much bigger scale. I think
Sure.
it was 50 times
Sure.
worse than what you're
Absolutely.
talking about. And that was my thing. Is like, I'm not saying it's bad, but if we're going to talk about really, really bad, being sued, Fox News deserved to be sued over the.
Yeah, they lost. They got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would never give CBS a pass in what they did.
Okay.
Maybe they only did one thing wrong versus 10.
Yeah.
But it's still worth them paying for that.
It
Because
seems,
if we don't, that one's going to turn into 10 things.
It seems like a nothing burger, though, in my opinion. It just doesn't. I don't. I mean, just because Trump is suing someone doesn't mean he's going to be successful.
Oh, sure, but I hope he is in this one.
Yeah.
No matter how the election turns out, I really hope this goes down because, I feel like we're in a dangerous place. Once the Democrat media has the ability and know that they can get away with doctoring videos like that, they're all going to do it. And now you have the majority of the news stations lying to everybody in America at all times because it's okay, because they're all mostly on the same side.
I just think that and how you get around that is through live interviews, and that's where we see.
Sounds nice, but
I mean, but
they're not going to do that, Pat. They get away with doctoring videos. They're not going to do the live. Why would they bother when they can get away with being dishonest?
I mean, but I think that's where you have the people are the ones. I mean, and you've seen Harris has been hammered by all sides of like, why aren't you talking to the press? Why aren't you doing live interviews?
Word salad.
Oh,
city all the time.
Yes, and that is, it's very apparent. And I'm saying
she's
that
for fracking, she's against fracking, she's pro-Palestinian, she's pro-Israel. She doesn't stand for anything.
Yeah, no,
and she certainly can't put a single sentence together. It doesn't sound like it's out of a Dr. Seuss book.
And people realize that, and I think that's why she might be losing. And
that's 100% why she's losing.
I just don't think that I don't think that particular interview did her any favors or made her any worse. That's why I think it's a nothing burger, in my opinion. I think overall, the way she's gone about talking to the press or the lack thereof is very apparent, and people realize, and they're picking up. I mean, because the whole how she was nominated, I have a huge issue with
massive issue here.
Because I was hoping they would have put in someone a lot more moderate, and I think the Democrats would have won in a landslide. I think there was multiple people they could have put up there, propped up there, but they didn't, and it was just, I felt very dirty to the voters. Now, I mean, people are just like, oh, well, look how well she's polling. Yeah, again, that's because people are going to vote for whoever has the D next to them. But I wish there was more of an open primary. Because I'll be honest, when she was running in 2020, she was the least liked person for me.
She was the worst.
Yeah, she was polling at between 0 and 1%. And so it just, and her polling as vice president, I mean, she did horrible. I mean, just again, the media hammered her, and now she's the nominee and didn't receive one vote to be nominated. Yeah,
if I were a Democrat and I felt like 2020 was stolen from the Democrats, this is another level.
Oh, yeah.
I would have been furious if I was a Democrat and this person got the nomination when there were phenomenal alternatives as far as I'm concerned. I'd take RFK Jr. in a heartbeat. That's just me. If I would have put side by side with Kamala just shouldn't even bother showing up. But there were real alternatives.
I agree.
And You know what else really upset me is when I ask some of my Democratic friends, how did you feel about it? It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
You're fine with the Democratic Party telling you who's going to represent that whole side? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. No.
You want to talk about lost as a human. You don't want to talk about um, institutionalized, whatever that thing is that says you can't even think right anymore. When you're happy for the organization to decide who leads you now, period. Your voice doesn't even matter at all anymore. What kind of a place are we headed in? You know, that should be such a huge alarm for Democrats. So I'm with you 1,000% on this one. But anyway, let's go back to the Reds, right? We're going a little too far into blue land. Let's go back into the Reds, right? So January 6th, absolutely brutal. And that's the thing that decides it for so many people, right? We have so many one issue voters. We have so many of them out there, right? If we add some more stuff, right, we've got a Russia problem on the red side, right? There are a lot of people who support Russia. There's a lot of people who want Ukraine to fail. I think that's brutal, right? Absolutely brutal.
Especially when you have Russia, who has basically created an axis of evil between, you got Russia, North Korea now sending troops to help fight in Ukraine. Are you kidding me? North Korea. And then you've got Iran, who is basically a proxy of them. And then Russia and China. It's like you have this total axis of evil. And, if you're a friend of any of those, you're basically an enemy of the United States. And we have people that are, I'm not saying the whole Ukraine war, I'm very torn on how much we should be contributing. I see both sides of why people think we should pull out, why think we should stay, but regardless, supporting Russia is just asinine to me in any capacity. It's a huge, and it seems to be that a lot of the parties like, oh wait, you're for Ukraine, well then I've got to support whoever's fighting them. And if it was North Korea, are you saying we would be we'd be supporting them too? I mean, I don't know.
Tucker Carlson be going to North Korea to let us know how beautiful the fields were there and their
Trump
cities,
did.
Right?
Trump did, and they have he saluted them and stuff. Like, ridiculous meeting that piece of shit over there. I don't. It's just.
I disagree a bit on that one. I think that one's a little more tricky. If we don't have the ability to sit down with our enemies, we're never going to be able to reason with them anyway. And I don't know. I do think that stuff's important. I don't like the environment we live in where we don't platform our enemies. It doesn't feel like a good thing because we have a country that's mostly blue now, and the enemy is the red side. You're deplatforming people everywhere now because they don't agree with them. That's becoming the thing, that if you don't agree with them, you won't even speak to them. You'll do everything you can to stop them from even speaking.
But you have to hold them accountable, and that's...
Oh, sure, you can hold them accountable, but you should sit down face to face like a man and let them know that you will be holding them accountable.
But my point is, if you're going to sit down with them, you have to hold them accountable. And Trump,
agreed. Absolutely.
And Trump, as soon as he goes and sits with any of them, whether it was Putin or Kim Jong-un, he's like a little puppy with them, that's where, okay, you want to meet with them? Okay. But then, hold them accountable to it. And I will say that's what Biden did, and that he would hold them accountable. I don't appreciate it just seemed like, especially North Korea, who is just, is country known for probably the worst human rights violations in the world. Some of the worst. I can't speak for that, but we sat there and you saluted them. Like, are you kidding me? Like that's just a spit in the face, my opinion.
Yeah. To go back to something you said earlier, you were talking about how the axis of evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
The new axis of evil, right? And I think that's one of the big flaws in the Republican Party right now. There are so many isolationists in the Republican Party. They want to withdraw from the world. They want America first and America only. That is dangerous on a level that I struggle with, Pat. Because if we retreat from the world, Israel's gone. All the bad guys are going to continue to get stronger and stronger and stronger until eventually they're going to rule the world. If we continue to back away and we don't look out for people, Russia will take Ukraine, China will take Taiwan, North Korea will take South Korea. God only knows where it goes from there. right? I think that's a massive issue right now in the Republican Party. And maybe even one I would point towards Ron DeSantis, as as he has said, and again, he's not in the running anymore, but it was something that really concerned me with him, was he felt that we shouldn't have the role that we should on the world stage. And I think it's more important than ever to strengthen our allies, to strengthen the ties with our allies, because the bad guys are already doing it, right? You got North Korea, just like you said, sending troops now into Ukraine. I'm waiting for South Korea. Where are you guys at? South Korea, let's go. We can't keep letting the bad guys win everything. So yeah, it's a big thing for me. It's moving away from the world stage, a huge problem for the Republican Party. A couple other big ones for me.
But if we're not taking care of each other, and I think that's where a lot of people have issues with, where we're sending all of this aid money to Ukraine. Again, not saying that's right or wrong, but I feel like we continually take care of other countries way more than we take care of ourselves. And that's what the people are struggling. I don't think anyone's saying, well, people are saying to totally break away from that.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of them are like, well, if you took care of us just half as well as you take care of everyone else, we could understand this. But that's what's not happening. I mean, it's, the whole thing with the hurricanes, natural disasters, and it's like we left. I mean, Western North Carolina was decimated, and the government, I think, did a good job of helping. But like, how much did help were they getting versus how much help has Ukraine gotten? And I just think we have to put America first. I mean, we can take care of other people, but our people should be number one. And that's
fair.
But that's the issue. Is like, I think a lot more people would be understanding if we were taken care of better. And how we get taken care of better is we have to have people in Congress that will work together. And right now, it's very difficult because these sides are so polarized that it is very difficult to get bills passed, because as soon as it has Democrat support, Republicans break away. As soon as a bill's got Republican support, the Democrats break away. It's very hard to find bipartisan Congress to be able to put forth for the American people, because as soon as, if a bill is passed under a Democrat president, then it's like, oh, it's look what he did. Look what the Democrats did. Yeah. Even though it took bipartisan support, but they don't want to give the win. Like the immigration bill. I mean, that's a perfect example. I know, and
the one for this year.
Yes, yeah. Yes. So, I mean, it's very unfortunate because, Trump had, I think, a good grasp on the border, and then, everyone said, oh, he's got kids in cages, there's issues, and blah, 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 blah. So Joe Biden comes in and they just take all the executive orders away, pull them one by one by one by one. The border, disaster. It was a disaster for years, for what, I guess, 3 years. And then, and we've been, and the whole thing was, oh, there's nothing we can do. Like, well, clearly there was something, because Donald Trump had it under control. So what did we do? So they got a bipartisan effort where you had the Republican senator from Oklahoma and one of the Democrats, and they came up with this bipartisan bill. And what happened? Didn't get voted on because Donald Trump, because he didn't want it to be a win for Joe Biden to fix the border. And that is just, it was ridiculous. Now,
and you hold that against Trump.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. We could have, the solution could have been fixed. And the people are like, oh, well, they should have done it sooner. Okay. You're right. They should have done it sooner, but they did it. They did it. We had a bipartisan effort, and it got Trump basically called his buddy Mike Johnson for the House of Representatives, said, hey, kill this bill. I'll fix it. It's ridiculous. It's just that's this type of stuff that we have to do what's good for the American people, no matter who's in office. And it's just too polarized. And that's the stuff that really frustrates me, is like, who cares if it's a win for one side or the other? This whole thing where we have to, we don't want to give them wins, that way another person can look better, it's ridiculous. And it goes against our values, in my opinion.
And I say I agree with the majority of what you said, definitely. But I will disagree overall with the handling of that, right? And if this was year one, right, and Republicans had refused to vote on it, I would condemn them to the ends of the earth. Absolutely disgusting. But it wasn't. It was after 3 years of a near open border. Depending on what source you view, and I might be a little off here, somewhere between what, 8 and 16 million people have come in 3 years. We have the highest amount of fentanyl deaths we've ever had. We have intelligence agencies stating that we have terror cells waiting to be activated in America currently. The danger, Kamala Harris made it clear, as far as I'm concerned, with 3 years of allowing one dangerous person after another come to this country. And obviously, there's plenty of people who aren't dangerous. But when you've got, even if you took the lowest number, 8-ish million, and you have even a decent sized minority of people coming in that are really bad people, that's unacceptable. The thing is,
So your answer
for me, so basically, as far as I'm concerned, this is just a trick. This was a trick by the Democratic Party to make it seem like they're actually securing the border right before the election. Their 3 years showed who they really were. And guaranteed, once they pass this, we're going to go back to open borders again. If Kamala Harris tricks everyone into thinking that she believes in securing our border, like she's claiming now, which is absolute nonsense, if you just look at her history, she's shown us who she is. People show you who they are. And she's shown us for 3 years. How long did it take? It took 3 years for her to even visit the border. That's disgusting. You imagine that. And she has the nerve every time she's asked to try. She says, Trump, 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 Trump. Crazy. But so I completely support Donald Trump when he asked them to kill the bill, because it would have been used as a win to trick the American people into thinking they were serious about the border. And the moment they get back into power again, they're going to go back and do the same thing they did for the last 3 years. Open borders, death, destruction, murder,
but you're making
mayhem,
assumptions.
rape,
But see,
everything that comes from keeping that wide
you're
open.
assuming that. We can't, I mean, there's no evidence to show they would do that.
That's what I'm saying. There's 3 years of evidence, Pat. 3 years. And then the year of the election, all of a sudden they claim they care about immigration.
But again, it was a bipartisan bill. Let's
Sure.
make, okay.
You'll have some people who just want to fix it. They don't see it like the way I see it.
Yeah, but we just talked. So I guess my point is, we just talked about how horrible these people that are coming in. So we're saying, well, we've done it for 3 years. Might as well do it for another year. I mean, that's basically what you're.
Absolutely. Because if the Dems win again, they've shown us who they are. You're going to go straight back to open borders again for the next 4 years. How many?
You're assuming, though.
I am, because I base it off what I watched. You had 3 years of it.
But they would have to then repeal the bill. I don't know.
They repealed every single thing that Trump basically did on day one. They have no problem with repealing things. Not a problem. Again, she's the most radical person who has ever existed on the Democrat side as far as a potential leader, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders has nothing on Kamala Harris. That's me personally.
I don't know.
So yeah, we'll be on completely opposite sides on this one, definitely. So a couple of my big ones was for anti-red, right? Trump abandoned the Kurds in Syria. I remember that. I'm ex-army. I was in Iraq, and what I'll tell you, Pat, is my life was saved by the Kurds. 2 of our 6-man teams. I won't go into more past that, but we spent several weeks with those people. And then in the middle of this fight for Syria, Trump just decides we're just going to abandon them all. And I don't know if you remember this at all, but I was horrified. I was sickened to my stomach. I couldn't believe you could abandon our allies in the middle of a war. You abandoned them all to be killed. And then it was due to public pressure. It was a week and a half later, he decided to start supporting them again. Now, obviously that did not work out in any way. And I have no idea how devastating that was at the time. But I'll never forgive him for that. And for me, probably one of the most important things is the fall of Afghanistan. That was a tough time for me, Pat. I couldn't believe it. As someone who's been to Iraq myself. I've got family members who've been to Afghanistan multiple times, right? Um, Trump made a deal with terrorists, with the Taliban. You know, he did his whole, oh, we'll just make a deal thing. You had the elected government of Afghanistan, and then you had the Taliban who murder and rape and treat women like slaves and cattle. And he decided, oh, I'm just going to make a deal with them that as long as they don't attack me on my way out so I can look good and get reelected, right? I read through the Doha agreements, every fucking word, excuse my language, went through every word of that. Basically, the whole thing was as long as you don't attack America, we're just going to go ahead and pull out and you're going to be able to co-rule this country. How did the government feel? The government wasn't even involved in this plan.
Hold on a second. This is where I have the huge issue with this. Is the only way they would co-rule is if their government allowed it. And my point is,
that's the point. They didn't. They weren't even involved in the negotiations.
Well, maybe they should have gotten off their ass and figured out how to kick the ass of the Taliban for the 20 years.
They have been.
And clearly
they can't do it in 20 years.
How long does it take?
It takes 50 to 100.
And so we're going to sit there in Afghanistan for 50 to 100 years? Are you kidding me? No.
That doesn't mean you're saying because of that we should let the terrorists co-rule the country?
Why would there's no letting them?
No, there is. Trump, that was the whole point of the Doha agreements. They were allowing the Taliban to co-rule the country. And that's what he did.
But the whole point was they're saying is Afghanistan is there's no winning there. The terrorists will always win. The only way the terrorists won't win is if we're there. That's it. Yeah,
disagree 1,000%.
I mean, how long does it take? We were in there for over 20 years, and they couldn't take care of the Taliban on their own in that period. I mean, we had people go over there, and it's like they're trying to. We go over there, try to train them, try to teach them, and they're just they show up when they want, they leave with it, but like they didn't care because we were their protector. And so at some point we have to sit there like, look, we need to come back home. This should be you. We don't ask you guys to come to our country and protect us. Why should we sit there and help you? We've been there for 20 years. At some point, we've got to be able to say, okay, we're done. You guys got this from here. And and
I agree with that, but that's a process. We just pulled everybody out. That was a wrap. There should have been multi-year long stages where we pull back more support. That's what we were doing. Everything at once, Pat.
But
everything.
We pulled the last.
We pulled all of it at the end. They didn't have air support. They were promised air support. I don't know if you ever heard that call of Biden talking to the president, where the president's saying, "Hey, we're losing the war," and Biden says, "Make it appear like you're still winning." Also talks about how he was going to continue to give him the air support. That stopped. That was a whole lie.
Okay. I'm not disputing any of that. I don't know about that piece. I guess I think overall my issue is we didn't have nearly as many troops when we left as we did in the heat of the battle. So we were already, bringing people home and not replacing them. But I think at some point we just had to pull them all out. I just don't think Afghanistan. We realized that Afghanistan wasn't winnable, and really the funny thing about Afghanistan. I'm not saying we shouldn't have gone in there and attacked because there were terrorists, but like the reason we went to Afghanistan was because of 9/11. And where were the terrorists operating out of? Pakistan.
No, there are tons of terrorists in Afghanistan.
But the ones that we were fighting, the ones that were responsible for 9/11, they're operating out of Pakistan. And so it was just, we went in there, just Afghanistan. Russia tried going in there and overtaking. It's unwinnable. It's an unwinnable war. And the only way that country would have stayed, where their government would have stayed in power, is if we stayed there. But as soon as we leave, it was inevitable. And I just don't think that's just like, why are we wasting time, money, soldiers' lives, keeping people away from their families for 6 months, 9 months, a year to go sit in there for a country that just can't take care of themselves? I'm sorry. It's just, I mean, for 20 years, that's how long your kid lives with you. For 20, and so we had a whole, like, these people should have had a whole nother generation of soldiers and support to be able to do this. And
But
they
imagine
failed.
generation after generation of generation that's radicalized to begin with. That's the whole point.
But
That's
that's
why
not
I
our
said
problem.
it is our problem because we made it our problem, Pat. Once we were there, it was our problem. And it was our job to make sure that we didn't allow all the men and women who'd served beside us to get raped, murdered, and their whole families massacred.
For
Like what happened
20
when we left.
years, we did that.
Yeah, Pat, you can't just pull the rug out of someone. Here's the analogy I'll give you, right? Let's say I'm teaching my son how to ride the bike, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm holding on to the handlebars, right? While he's riding. He's like, Dad, I'm getting it. Dad, I'm getting it. Dad, I'm getting it, right? Now, maybe the next stage of that is, right, he's doing it, but I'm not holding on the handlebars now, right? Maybe I'm hovering, right? I'm allowing him to control, but I'm here, right? At any moment, I'm ready to grab that handle if it goes off the rail, right? That's not what we did here. With Afghanistan, we said, "Good luck, son," and we literally just turned and marched the other direction while our son is barreling down the freaking hill at 1,000 miles per hour. Obviously, he smashed into a tree. He wasn't ready for it. That was the whole point. Maybe it only took 2 more years, Pat. Maybe it took 3. There was a right way to get out, and there was a wrong way. And the wrong way is siding with the terrorists to let them rule the country. What has happened? 20 million women are slaves now, Pat. 20 million. The majority of all the men who work for us, they're all dead. Their families, they're all dead. They're all massacred. Now, women, they can't vote now. They can't drive now. They can't even leave the house without written approval. They're not even allowed to show their faces in public now.
It's horrible.
It is the worst thing, and we did that. Joe Biden did that. Donald Trump did that.
But let's use your analogy.
Mm-hmm.
If it took 20 years for your son to ride a bike, you'd let it go. That's my point.
Well, that's tougher.
It's
That's tougher because it's such a different situation.
I got it, but I just think for 20 years, it was long enough. That's just what I think. We were just there, and to your point, absolutely everything you mentioned about what's going on there, horrible, absolutely. But I can name 20 other countries that's just as bad, and we're not in there.
We don't throw people off the deep end. You throw people into the deep end, they drown almost every time.
But at what point?
You ease them in, Pat. That's the whole point.
But
you keep going and you keep going until you're at that good place where you can let them in. You're saying
there's never
we should just no. You're wrong, Pat. I'm sorry. I disagree with you 1,000%. You're just deciding because we didn't have that version. Why didn't we continue to have air support for another year while Biden was watching the Taliban move from town to town, city to city, raping, slaughtering, murdering everyone. These giant convoys. Boom, one button, it was over. One command, it was over. Each time. And we watched, I know because I watched it. I watched town after town, city after city fall. I watched people in their basements saying they're coming to kill us right now and my family. It was heartbreaking for me. We just pulled the rug out of these people. There was a right way to get out. There's a right way to get in. There's a right way to get out. We're just saying we pulled the rug out. We're saying, oh, we can't be there forever. We didn't need to be, but there was a right way to pull out.
I think that,
and we allowed those terrorists to murder their way across the entire country. Trump didn't do that. That was on Biden's watch.
I just think that I trust the judgment of the people that were in charge, and I'm sure it wasn't. I believe, and I've read that even all of the military strategists, all the generals and stuff. I mean, they all said you can't win, no matter how many more years. And that's that. And we're going to agree to disagree, but I don't think there was ever a winnable. I don't think if we stayed in
convoy. Let's take the convoy scenario, right? Joe Biden's taken power now, and all of America and all the world has watched this army, right, amass, and they're going from town to town, city to city, rape, murder, mayhem, the worst of the worst, killing all the guys that we bled with, that we fought alongside, right? You're the president of the United States. What would you do? Would you just let them continue like Joe Biden did? Or would you blow them? Do you have to think about it?
But I don't have the intel that he had. That's the thing. We don't know.
They're terrorists who rape and murder, and they're going to stone their enemies to death,
But
and they're going
again,
to make every single woman, mom, sister, cousin, slaves when they're done.
okay, but
We
okay,
know what
I
it looks
got
like
it.
when they're in
And
power.
my response is okay, and we can't save everybody.
Oh,
And there's
that's gross, Pat.
yeah,
Please
I
forgive
know.
me. That's gross.
No,
You
but
can't
like
save everyone. You've got to.
Micah,
We've
listen.
been working with these people side and side, and now we're watching them all get raped and murdered. And you're like, we shouldn't save. We can't save everyone. That's insane.
But the whole world, is filled with
If
that.
we're watching 10 guys walk down our street right now,
We're in
and
America.
we know they're
Totally
going to
different.
rape and murder.
No,
Of course
totally
it
different.
is.
Totally different.
And you're saying we can't save everyone?
No, I disagree because this is our country. This is our country. That's the difference. That's why I'm saying we can't.
That's some cold-hearted shit.
No, but like
that's
we have, I mean, how many countries out there that are doing it all? And if we
weren't in those other countries.
But why don't we go in them?
We had integrated with these people. We were side by side with these people. These interpreters, they sat with us, right? The people fought, they bled and died alongside us. Do you understand? They were our brothers. They were our sisters.
And
they
you know what?
depended on us, and we let them all get raped and murdered.
I feel that they should have done better for themselves. I'm sorry, but like they should have.
Disagreeing with that. But you're giving America a pass. We didn't need to do any better. It was okay for us to let them get raped and murdered and slaughtered.
All right. Let's move on to something else. We're never gonna agree.
Yeah,
I see. I mean, I see your point. I just think. Okay. Yeah.
So that was, again, I think for the red side, those are a lot of my big problems with the red side. And then I guess one last one would be the personality of Trump himself, right? He is so offensive at all times, right? It doesn't feel like there's a version of himself that allows himself to be moderated at all. And because of that, he radicalizes the left like no one ever has. You know, I was surprised. I might have told you this a while back, right? This was 6 months ago. I did a deep dive. Maybe this was a year ago, okay, right? I did a deep dive into MSNBC and Fox News. And I read them both every day for over a month. I was just curious what it was like. I wanted to know, because those are two stations I don't watch too much, because that's a very blue and that's a very red one. And I was surprised because for the red side, they probably had a sixth, an eighth of their articles were against the Democrats. The rest was just regular news. Rest was just regular news. You know, there's only like an eighth of it anti-Biden, anti-Democrat. When you went to MSNBC, Pat, I was blown away. It was like a third of the articles were all anti-Trump, anti-Trump, anti-Trump. The Dems have kept the blues radicalized for 4 straight years, waiting for this. You know.
Well, and the funny thing is, I think that they didn't learn their lesson back in basically 2015, 2016, and the big thing was that Trump got so much media coverage, you know, and so because of all his craziness, and so like all these stations, they're like showing him and just like, oh my God, he's so horrible, but it was bad coverage is still coverage. And that, and you know, and that
there is bad
coverage. Yeah, but it's
not always that simple. It's always that simple.
Well, no, but it's just he was always on the news because of everything he does.
Yeah.
And now you're exactly right. And it seems like the platform has been, I mean, look at Harris, like it's been like, well, we're better than him. And that seems to be the answer is like, well, what are you going to do? Well, we're not going to do what he does. That's like the answer that we get. And that's what people are like, well, okay, you're not going to do that, but what are you going to do? And that's where
we're going to doctor videos. We're going to do lies like that, and we're still going to say Trump's the bad guy. You know?
Yes, yeah.
But yes, I think that's my thoughts in general about the red side. I guess at both of ours we had a pretty good back and forth.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Those are my flaws in general. I think those are things I really struggle with the Republican Party. You know, and before we move on to the Democrats, let me just take a quick moment to give a shout out to Matt Walsh, the only man in the Daily Wire who stood by Ron DeSantis to the very end. Every other person in Daily Wire had, you know, they're all talking about the no charisma everyone jumped on the Trump bandwagon real fast. But that man, okay, was the only person who stayed with Ron DeSantis to the very end. Because as far as I'm concerned, he's just a dad. And there was only one candidate that actually represented his morals and his values. So, Matt Walsh, hell of a job with that, man. I truly mean it. Yeah. All right. So, we ready for the blue side?
Let's go.
Oh, Lord. You want to start off with the blue? I actually have multiple pieces of paper of some of the most horrific things happening under Democrat rule in Democrat cities that I think people just have no idea of really how bad it really is to live under the blue thumb.
Okay, you go ahead. No, I would like to hear some of your reasonings.
Okay. Uh-oh. I think a page is missing. All right.
What's over there?
Oh, a page fell. Pause the video. All right. So I printed up a whole bunch of stuff because I've been really horrified at some of the things going on in America. And I've been shocked. When I share some of this information with people, almost every time they have no idea. And every time it's something like, oh my God, I can't imagine that's something. That's really, or it's, you're lying. We don't believe you. There's no chance that's happening, right? I got family members that do it every single time. Nope, we don't believe a word that you say. It's all out there. It's all out there, family. All you got to do is look. Hate the Reds all you want. Loathe Donald Trump all you want. But be honest about what's going on in your party. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say Democratic Party right now is pro-criminal, soft on crime. Big time, as far as I'm concerned. You know, some example, you know, you've got, you take New York City, right? Bail reform, right? 66% of offenders released committed additional crime. So basically, they changed the bail laws in New York so that multiple things aren't bail eligible now. And bail eligible means if you do something wrong, they assign a monetary amount to the thing that you did. And then you have to pay, I think it's 10% of that. And if you pay that, you get to leave prison and you get to be out in the free in the world until it's time for your trial. Yeah. And if you can't, you're stuck in prison, right? So what they've done is they've taken some horrendous crimes and they've removed the bail eligibility piece, which means you do this crime, you're out the same day. Boom, committing more crimes. Where normally a lot of these people would be locked up and they'd stay locked up until it was time for them to go to trial and get put away, right? But so you've got out of people, so some of the things that they removed bail eligibility for: dismembering a corpse. You got Long Island, 4 people caught dismembering a corpse. They removed sharp instruments, multiple body parts, and other related items from a house. An assistant DA alleged the quartet went, I guess the 4 of them, went to barbaric lengths to cover up a killing, with police removing meat cleavers and butcher knives from their homes. Those people are all released again because of the bail eligibility.
We have some new developments to get to now in a disturbing case of those body parts that were found on Long Island. 2 of the 4 people facing charges went back to court today. It all comes as Long Island lawmakers are making a new push to make the charges like the ones they're facing felonies. News 4's Greg Sergel live in Babylon. I know you've been covering this from the start. What's the update, Greg?
Well, Natalie, those lawmakers you mentioned spoke here just outside the park where this gruesome saga began last week. And ironically, it happened just as 2 of the defendants were again walking free from the county courthouse.
No comment.
Neither Alexis Nieves nor Jeffrey Mackey
Jeff, do you have anything you want to say for yourself?
would speak to reporters today after a brief court appearance, but both remained free without bail.
You imagine people who got caught for hiding a murder, and we're putting them right out on the street again? That's Democrat policies right there. We have, obviously, the riots of BLM, right? You had, as they would say, they were, what do they say? They were mostly peaceful. That's the phrase that gets used, right? Yep. You know, it's funny. You see that and you see, like, entire buildings on fire, right? And so many of these people, they weren't charged. Or you had celebrities coming in and bailing them out. right? Insane things. So,
But also for the January 6th, I mean, there was the whole, bail, for all the political prisoners of them that were caught breaking into the Capitol. Now, most of them have been charged, but I think the point they're trying to make, we are innocent until proven guilty. I'm not saying I agree with, that, like, if it's pretty clear, like for murder, if you are being charged with murder, there's no bail. Yeah, but
if you're hacking up bodies.
Yeah.
So we'd be letting you out on the streets.
No.
The Democrats say yes,
but like
and they're doing it.
But I guess the riots and stuff. I'm not saying I agree with bail, but I just don't see that really any big difference that January 6th breaking into the Capitol. So funding people's bail.
We're talking about BLM.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, all lighting the buildings on fire and stuff. Horrible.
Oh, yeah, that's terrible.
But it's just when they were raising money for bail.
The scale can't compete with BLM versus January 6th. Now, the importance of that, you'd say January 6th was more important than the BLM riots.
Sure.
But the scale of the riots and the batches that went on 1,000 times
worse
than
okay.
what happened.
We're in agreement. We're in agreement.
Yeah. All right, some of the other stuff pretty shocking, right? The U.S. Attorney's Office declined to prosecute 2/3 of people arrested in 2022. 2/3. So the most recent complete fiscal year, 2022, prosecutors declined 67% of all arrests. This represents 52% of felonies. Pat, every other felony that someone was arrested for, they didn't prosecute them. They decided to not move forward. Every other one. You want to talk about soft on crime? That sounds insane to me. Misdemeanors, 72 misdemeanors. 3/4 of every misdemeanor, you're allowed right out, right? And it's crazy because what you see Democrats saying crime is down, crime is down, crime is down. And you say, wait a second. The cops are actually arresting people. There seemed to be the most crime you ever had. Yet how is it that the statistics are down? Because they're making statistics out to be a lie. That's what they're doing. They're no longer prosecuting the murderers and the rapists. And then, guess what? Murder and rape is down. That's insane to me. In 2016, under Obama, it was 31%. So 1 out of every 3 people they decided not to prosecute them. Okay? Under Trump, it was 48%. Every other person, not great. Under Biden, 67%. 2 out of every 3 people. That's soft on crime like I've never seen, right? And again, then it looks really good. We can say, oh, crime's down, crime's down, crime's down. My God, the last time I was in New York City, Pat, I was with my son. We were just passing through. We ordered a pizza, come back from visiting the family. And remember, we parked and we got out and we started walking. It was like a block to the pizza place. Pat, it took seconds. Like the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I felt such danger. I'd never felt anything like it since I read. Never in my life, Pat. Never in my life have I ever felt something like that. I could feel danger every single moment. I remember my son, he looking at me, he's laughing at me. Dad, you're being ridiculous. And all I could think of was I couldn't believe I was risking my son's life. I couldn't believe I was in a place like this without having a pistol on me.
Why did you feel so dangerous, though?
I don't know. I felt it. I felt it in the stairs. I felt it all around me. I don't know. It's that sense. You can sense danger. It is 1,000% a thing. I've never felt it. Never.
The only reason to say is
since I had bullets, coming at me in Iraq. Never have I felt that ever.
I've been to New York City many times.
Yeah.
I never felt that.
Okay.
So I'm just. That's the only reason I was wondering.
You've been shot at?
No, I haven't. No, you're right. I'm not disputing that. Never said I went to Iraq. I said, I'm just saying I've been in New York City.
Yeah. But, okay, so let's look at the cost of Democrats' soft on crime policies, right? So we look at, this is from the House Committee on the Budget, Washington, D.C., October 2023. So let's look at Washington, D.C. crime statistics in 2023 compared to 2022. Homicide up 37%. Homicide, that's murder. Personal theft, 22%. Robbery, 70%. Motor vehicle theft, 103%. Holy Jesus. Arson is up 125%. Total violent crime up 40%. That sounds insane. Here's some more crazy stuff, right? The council approved fiscal year 2024 budget for the Metropolitan Police Department. Looks like the patrol services for North and South were cut by 27.6 million. Imagine, so arson up 125%, and we're cutting 27.6 million from the police. Recruiting division cut by 1.9 million.
Where's this at?
This is all coming from the...
No, what city is this?
This is D.C.
Oh, okay.
This is D.C., right? Right around the corner from us right now, right? School and safety division cut by 2.2 million. Agency management cut by 5.8 million. Total cuts to the MPD, 20.2 million. You imagine we've got a place where the crime is going through the roof while we're actually not prosecuting the majority of them. It's way higher than what I'm saying right now. Way higher. And we're cutting police funding across the board. That's insane to me. You're talking about death, violence, rape, murder, everything. That's all happening to me, you, people, our family, our friends, people we don't know, people who are voting blue, who have no idea. You don't know what you're really voting for. Hate Trump all you want. You're getting killed. You're getting raped, murdered, set on fire under Democratic rule, as far as I'm concerned. Ready for this? Almost done with this section here for the soft on crime, pro-crime section of the reason I have such a problem with the Democratic Party. Democrat-run cities continue to defund their police departments. Across America, 2022, LA, California, cut 175 million. Oakland, California, cut 14.6 million. San Francisco, California, 120 million. New York, cut 1 billion. 1 billion. Major increase in crime overall in all of the U.S. Homicide up 13%. Rape up 23%. Assault up 33%. 9 U.S. cities have hit homicide records. 18 of the 20 highest crime cities in America, they're all Democrat run. The highest amount of rape, murder, mutilation, you name it, 18 of 20, they're Democrat run cities, right? 2021, the deadliest year in 2 decades for law enforcement. We don't hear about that, do we? We hear Black Lives Matter, right? And you're a racist and a monster if you say Blue Lives Matter, or maybe even something insane like all lives matter. That's insane. All right, so next up with the Democrat stuff would be the extreme support for gender ideology and the trans movement, and the real harmful effects that those are having on people in America, especially children, right? The first thing is we have hospitals in America that are doing surgeries on children. Now, you'll hear Democrats say it's not happening. That's a lie. And you know the Democrat who will tell the truth about that? Bill Maher, as he makes clear. I was watching an episode of his just the other night, and they said something about gender surgeries happening. His whole audience booed. And he's like, what are you booing for? Those are absolutely happening in America right now. You're like, are you booing because you don't like it, or you don't want to believe it, or you can't deal with it? All of the above, who knows? But when you think about that, you take girls, you're chopping off the breasts of young women, right? When you start down the path of hormone blockers, it leads to nothing good as far as I'm concerned. You have potential health problems for the rest of your lives. Some of these people are going to have medications and illnesses. They're going to struggle with everything they do because of what's done to their body by having these hormones put in. And a lot of these kids, they're just confused, right? It's a tough time when you start feeling a little different in your body, right? If you're a girl, right, maybe your breasts start growing a little bit, right? And you notice that from the boys, that might feel very uncomfortable. I could imagine that it would, right? You probably want to repress that sexuality. It makes you very uncomfortable. And so you go down this path of taking hormone blockers and cross-sex hormones, and what happens to a lot of these kids is they grow out of it. The majority of them grow out of it. And the problem is when you start growing out of it, a lot of these changes, they're permanent, Pat, right? You have girls that are going to have a hoarse voice for the rest of their life, talking like this.
But
they're hoping they...
My understanding, though, is, and I'm no expert in this in any capacity, and I'm not defending it, I'm not pro it, but I guess with the puberty blockers, isn't that my understanding that it's more of just you're delaying it? And so at that point, then, if they decided to wait a second, this isn't for me, then they could stop, and then this puberty would just happen a little bit later in life. Is that
it sounds nice, doesn't it? It's like a fairy tale description. It's just not true. What happens with a lot of boys when they resume it, their Johnson doesn't develop properly. They end up with a micro penis. A lot of these kids, you're talking like this for the rest of their life. And you can imagine.
Well, that's like me right now.
I mean, I wasn't going to bring it up. Right, Big Johnson. Then I am over here. Micah Big Johnson Rondinoni. I know. I wasn't going to bring it up.
Yeah, of course.
But I can't imagine. I can't imagine being so confused as a teen that you go down this path because your family, your loved ones are not, I would say, courageous enough to really do the research and really see what's going on and to, fight back against the friends and relatives and government. All these people are saying, oh, affirm your child, affirm your child, affirm your child. You mean destroy your child. That's what it is. These kids are mutilating their bodies, Pat. You can imagine a couple years in, if you're a girl, your breasts are gone. You're never getting those suckers back. You might have facial hair for the rest of your life. You might have a more pronounced jawline, right? You go back to living as a girl again, but you're messed up forever. And if you go down the path of any sort of sex change operation, you're sterilized in 100% of the cases. These people don't understand you're never going to have an orgasm, ever, which means that you're never going to enjoy sex properly. You're going to have struggles with intimacy with your partner for the rest of your lives. And these boys, right? They take your penis, it's gone. You're never getting that sucker back, right? Women, they take a huge chunk out of your arm and make this pretend penis thing, right, to use, right? Again, if you're a boy turning into a girl, they literally take parts of your body and they create like a flesh sack inside. And I realize this is a little horrific, but it's meant to be, right? This is a place we talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's it's like a wound, essentially. You have to dilate it. You have to take this machine and stick it in it multiple times a day, every day for the rest of your life, because it will close up on its own. And you can imagine, so you got this flesh sack, right, that you can never have an orgasm, right?
It's interesting. I have a friend, I'm not going to name his or her name, that has a child that is going through this. And I asked this person, and I want to make sure I don't insinuate in any details about this person because this is their private life. I'm going to use their, so I don't even reference the sex of this person. But their child is going through this, and I asked, I was like, what is it like, and they were saying how it was such a difficult decision. And they are letting their child go through this. And they were explaining how difficult it was emotionally, because, not wanting their child to feel like this. And, and it's a very difficult situation. I can't imagine being a parent that has to even make that decision to allow their child to do that. I mean, if one of my children, came to me and said, I don't know what I would do. But it's
I'd hope you'd talk to me.
Well,
you and I would talk that sucker out. And I tell you what, I would help you see the light, my friend, because I love you and your children.
I understand that. But it's interesting, Bill Maher has talked about this a lot, where, our country, when it comes to let's say the liberal ideas, we typically look to Europe and the Scandinavian countries as they're typically the real liberal ideas and we kind of follow them. But it's interesting, all those countries have all come out and the studies have shown like actually this is not good for children. This is bad. And they have all pretty much stopped doing that. So now we're the only country that's really allowing this. So that is the thing that kind of really makes me like cringe when it comes to bringing children in this. I'm, very, I want to say is it libertarian, where it's like, hey, do whatever you want to your own self as long as it doesn't affect, I've known multiple transgender people,
Sure.
both going from male to female, female to male. And hey, I support them, whatever you want to do. I don't feel the need to do that, but hey, whatever you want to do to your body. But I do agree that it's when we bring children in the mix, it's a very difficult subject. And I would tend to disagree with allowing it. It's just, I'm not in that position. And it's very hard for me to make judgment on situations that I've never experienced. Like I've experienced a lot, and I can, and I have a lot of emotions and feelings around stuff that I've dealt with. But this is not something I've ever experienced, and I'm just thankful that I don't have to. I'm not just because it's just that's got to be an emotionally tolling thing. But it's again going back to if we're the only country that's doing it. And especially there's lots of civilized countries that have come out and said, I don't know about this anymore. I feel like that should be kind of the flag waving up like maybe this isn't right.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of what you're really talking about, you're talking about the CAS review. It's an independent review of their gender identity services for children and young people. Came out in April of this year. This was data analyzed from the England's Tavistock gender clinic, the largest in the world until it was shut down this year.
Oh, really?
Due to this report, right? Countries that have stopped medical transition for teens, Great Britain, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, and on and on. You're right, Pat. This report was so damning in what we're actually doing to our children. The majority of these civilized countries, they're done. They're finished with it. They're never going to let another child get mutilated
So is it
and harmed again.
Is it
in
like
America? Full steam ahead. Couldn't care any less.
I'm guessing, is it like once you're over the age of 18, that's okay in these countries?
Yeah, this specifically, that would be different for each country. Each
Sure.
country has their own laws as far as that goes.
Sure.
And that's a much trickier thing when it comes to, kind of like you said, with adults doing what they want with their body.
Yeah.
But children across the world, we're recognizing this is the worst thing we could ever do to the most vulnerable of us.
Sure.
And America's not interested. America's full steam ahead, right? It's just insanity as far as I'm concerned. And I gotta go back to something about the person that you mentioned, right? I apologize if this is a little awkward for a moment. When you had mentioned this to me previously, you had mentioned that, as you don't know a whole bunch about the gender ideology and a lot of the cross hormones, all that kind of stuff, you had mentioned that she had kind of this person had kind of taken you aside and kind of explained to you that like hormone blockers are just putting a pause, right? It's fine. And I think if you remember, you and I talked, I kind of let you know it's not fine, right? Let's talk the micro penis again, right? That's devastating. You want to talk about destroying a child forever, And so my thought was, did you have any intention of sharing any of that with this person, just so this person would be as informed as possible?
I believe, I'm not even going to say I believe, I know this person is very, very smart. This person would know way more about this than me.
But they didn't mention the micropenis, did they? They said it's a safe pause.
I know this person has done lots of research into this.
So you think they're cherry picking the stuff that they
I don't
share
believe
then?
so. I don't believe so. And but again, this person shared this information with me. But I just don't think it's my business to tell this person what they should do with their child. I mean, and I hate to, it's kind of like one of the things where if it's legal, I mean, right now, just because I don't agree with it, but if they're doing something that is legal, who am I to judge? It's,
And we're not saying judge, right?
Yeah, I know.
I'm just saying it sounds like this person wasn't actually as informed as they should be when they're making a decision that potentially going to destroy this child forever. That's how I look at this stuff. I think personally, if that were my friend and I kept this to myself, if I shared it, do I risk losing our friendship? You better bet. But do I do what's right in my heart? I do. And I couldn't imagine if in 10 years, I reconnect with that friend and they say, my child killed himself for what I did to them. And you're thinking, my God, I could have at least said something.
Yeah.
Some thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. I think, again, that's where I go back to, I know this person has done more research than I, and I'm sure, I am positive that they have looked at all of the potential negative side effects. And I just, because I know, I keep saying this person because I don't want to give any insight to who this is.
Sure.
But like, I know this person was not looking forward to making this decision. So it's up to them. I mean, just because I may have thoughts, I don't want to lose a friendship over something like that, and especially if it's not my business, I mean, that's my personal
They
thoughts.
shared it with you. That does make it your business. That's how I view it.
In some ways, maybe.
Yeah. Well, the last thing I'll say about this little piece before I move on to the next is, that phrase that I use, love people enough to tell them the truth, Pat, no matter what it might cost you. That's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. So we'll talk about some more of this, this harmful gender insanity that's harming our children, right? California, right? In California, for example, one of the most radical states in the country right now, but there are others that are very, very similar. California just gets a lot of the news, right? California is the first state to ban school rules requiring parents to be notified that a child has changed their pronouns. So your child, right, you have no idea. Even if you're Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. You live in California, right? You don't know your child goes to school. They're potentially being influenced by other kids, but they're getting influenced by the school themselves because there's programs constantly across the nation right now, and you don't know what they're for. My own son's school here, we were looking at the different programs that are out there, different after-school programs that are out there at this school, and there were acronyms for a bunch of them, right? And I went through the whole list. Every single program, Pat, if it had an acronym, it was defined, except for one. And it was a gender ideology after-school program.
Really?
That's the only one that they were hiding from parents. And so you don't know. And that's in Virginia.
And your son goes to public schools here in Virginia.
Absolutely, right? This is what I saw for myself on the website, right? And you got a place like California, you're out in crazy land over in California with what you'll allow to happen. So you got your child going to school, you got programs that are happening, and you don't even know. You could, and all of a sudden your son is now identifying as a girl. You don't know. They have no legal right to tell you, okay? That's a problem for me. But it gets worse, right? Again, in California, right? So California State Assembly approved a bill, AB 957, making gender affirmation a factor to be considered in child custody. So now your child says, I'm not a boy anymore, Dad, I'm a girl. And if you don't affirm your child, your ex has a great chance of taking your son from you now. You imagine that. If you don't just agree that your child is the wrong sex and agree to put them down a path of mental and physical mutilation and potential pain and suffering for the rest of their lives, if you don't agree to that, Pat, you might lose your child. I can't imagine something like that.
Oh yeah, no,
right?
That's where the line. It's.
You say that's where the line's crossed. It's not. I'm about to tell you where the line's crossed, Pat. Okay, we're crossing some lines there. We're about to cross a whole universe of lines. Okay, you ready for this? SB 107, good old California again. Ready? Out-of-state gender reassignment surgery without parental consent. The law allows judges in California to terminate custody of parents living in other states if the parent's child shows up seeking gender transition treatment without knowledge or consent. This is approved by the governor. So your child in Virginia goes to California, wants to be a girl. They strip you of your parental rights. You're no longer your child's father.
I don't.
SB 107.
But I feel like there's got to be more to that.
There is more, but that's 1,000% true. Signed in by Governor Newsom, who's one of the most monstrous human beings I can't imagine such a thing.
My point is that I don't see how a judge in California could overrule a judge in Virginia. So I'm saying if the child is a resident of Virginia and just happens to lollygag over to California, which would be pretty difficult, but let's say he did.
Sure.
I don't see how a judge in California could then strip custody from a resident of a different state. I
also don't know how they do it, but I do know SB 107 says they figured out a way.
Yeah, no, that's...
Again, you want to talk about crossing line.
Yeah, absolutely.
They'll take your children from you. You're not even their parent anymore. You want to talk about a dangerous world when Democrats are in charge. That's a nightmare for me. That's a nightmare, you know? And then we have something kind of the opposite of that, right? In Florida, right? Ron DeSantis, hell of a guy, Ron DeSantis. Absolute phenomenal human being. Parents who allow gender-affirming medical care for their children can lose custody of your children now. He's doing the exact opposite. You want to mutilate your child? You have no right to ever guide them ever again. And I 1,000% agree with that. 1,000,000% agree with that. So, you know, that's the gender insanity happening across America right now. But it's worse than that, right? Because like I said, it's being taught in schools. It's being taught everywhere you can imagine. And what they're doing is they're creating this, you get them at a young enough age, and by the time they're old enough to vote, there's no back and forth about that. You get them at a young age and they completely believe in the importance of mutilating themselves and each other. It's the greatest kindness they could possibly give themselves. The Democrats are literally reprogramming our children so that by the time they're age, they're going to vote for all this stuff.
You're assuming that just because someone's trans, they're going to vote blue their whole life. And that's where I disagree.
They're more than likely going to vote blue.
They might.
Their whole life.
Yeah, but we can't. I mean, we're making a lot of assumptions here. I think the odds are they probably will.
The blue party is the party of child mutilation. The red party is the party against that. There is a future universe where somehow these things swap, but that's not the foreseeable future, right? It's not bad.
My point is though, I think that when and this is kind of holistic looking at like when we pick who we're voting for, I don't think one issue. I mean, there are people that will vote on one issue, but you know, I also believe that there's people that I don't like this about my candidate, but I can appreciate these other things, and vice versa. And so I just don't. I think it's hard. I don't appreciate people putting a sticker on me. It's like, I'm in the military. I'm from the South. Oh, you vote Republican? No, but you assume that. But I don't think it's the case. And I just think we have to consider that, like, people, if you're gay, like, oh, well, the LGBTQ, is very Democrat. I mean, Trump has polls very well with some gay. I mean, like, so I just, I don't.
And gay is very different.
Yeah, no, but
I do agree once upon a time that it wasn't the way it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know, that's my thoughts on it. But I think that it's also, you kind of get into, there's a big deal on when we talk about transgenders in sports, with the NCAA, Riley Gaines, she was, I think she was a swimmer, and, she missed out on a competition because of I think Liz Thomas.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Leah Thomas.
and
Yeah.
she's made a big deal about it, and where it's like the hormones and how the biological males that are transitioning have you know basically bigger muscles and are able to compete harder and faster. So one of the propositions that people have said, like, okay, well, Title IX was supposed to protect women. What happened to protecting women with this, in these sports?
We're erasing women from
Yeah,
sports
so
right
it's
now.
a very, again, it's very difficult because I've never experienced that, but I can imagine the people that have. That's like, wait a second, like this is college scholarships on the line, so it's very tricky. And one I think I don't want to say it's funny, but like some are like, okay, well, just let them create their own leagues. It's it's easy to say, hard to do when you have a very minuscule amount of people
Sure.
that are that are trans. I think in college sports, I think it's it is a very low percentage, but I don't know. It's these are just hard topics, and I think it's easy for us to sit back, not judge, but to have opinions on this when we haven't experienced it. That's all I'm saying, and it's just I can't.
Sure.
I can't imagine the emotional stuff that a parent has to go through if a child comes like that. I mean, like I have 3 kids, and each one of them has their own goods and bads and different things, but and I've experienced a lot as a child. Not to I've spoke about my brother. I had a brother 16 that committed suicide. It's not something I would ever want anyone to experience, but I have, and I can talk about it. So it's when it comes to mental health and firearms in the house, like I have, I will speak very loudly on it and my thoughts, but I don't. It's very difficult for me to if someone were to give opinions and it's like, look, when you experience suicide in your family, it's you take a bigger perspective, and that's all I'm saying. We can have these talks, but all I want to say is for the parents that are experiencing this, like, I feel for you. It's got to be very difficult.
Absolutely, especially I think with a lot of the misinformation out there.
Yeah,
such
absolutely.
as hormone blockers, completely reversible, all that kind of stuff, right? It's so incredibly difficult. I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube from teenagers, young adults, their families, right, who went down these paths. Parents who are destroyed because their child is on the edge of suicide because they can never fix themselves ever again, and they say, "I didn't know. They didn't tell me this stuff." They said, they use that line, you want a dead son, or was it a live son or a dead daughter?
Yeah.
Dead son, a live daughter, something like that, right? And they repeat that. They say, that's what I thought. I thought my child would kill themselves if I didn't do that. And what we're finding now is studies are showing you'll actually grow out of it. The majority of people will grow out of it if they're not put on that path. And most of them will just end up being gay, as they were supposed to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
What we're actually doing is we're taking a mass amount of gay people and we're horribly mutilating them. And you want to talk about suicide, their suicide rates go through the roof once this stuff is done. This doesn't make any of them better. This makes the majority of them far worse. The damage done is catastrophic.
Sure.
So yeah, it's tough stuff. I was just watching something yesterday. The UN just recently put out a report that 900 medals have been awarded to transgender men instead of the women who should have gotten them, for example.
900 medals.
900 medals. I'm not sure exactly where, but basically it's just a report trying to show that more and more women are being basically erased from sports. And that's not going to stop. That's just going to continue if that keeps going. So yeah, kind of moving on with some stuff here. So yeah, gender ideology stuff is very difficult for me. It's one thing to say, hey, as an adult, you can be whoever you want to be. I get it. I'm with you 100%, man. But when you're talking about children, I'll fight a war to save those children's lives.
Sure.
That's what I'll tell you right now, right? If there's a civil war over whether or not we're going to mutilate our children, you know what side I'm on.
Yeah.
That's protecting kids, man. And to include from themselves and their parents and their families. no matter what that would cost me, because I know that's the right thing to do for me. You know what I mean?
Sure.
All right, so we're moving on for the other big segment here for my real struggles, I think, with the Democratic Party is pro-racism. Pro-racism. We have the worst racism in our country we've ever had my entire life. I've never seen anything like it before. And you say, okay, man, all this racism from the whites, right? Absolutely not what I'm talking about in the slightest. The amount of racism against white people and now Jews, through the roof. You can go on YouTube and you can find YouTube, TikTok, every one of those, and you can find videos everywhere against white people, one after another, after another, after another. Try that against a non-white person, you're banned in 24 hours. You're never getting your account back. It is insane. Black Lives Matter was the worst thing that ever could have happened to the black community. Absolutely the worst, right? And let me start off by saying, and this is a very tricky subject. This is very difficult stuff, right? I grew up, I never saw race, Pat. This was a relative thing where race came up everywhere and everything all the time. I couldn't care any less. I don't care if you're white. I don't care if you're black. I don't care anything. I just don't care. I care about you, Pat, right? I care about you, human. I care about you, person, right? Who you are, what you've done, what you stand for. That's what I care about. But that's not how we're dealing with anything anymore. Now, if you're at a place where it's becoming completely acceptable to hate white people, and now Jews, and now it's on to the Jews as well. The amount of anti-white, pro-people of color stuff going on in America it's poison. It's absolute poison. And we're no longer able to really talk about what's really going on. And so the greatest victims of this hoax that black people are current victims in society are black people. Because we've taken people and it's just, and again, pause by saying, this is tricky stuff here, right? I've got black friends. I don't see your color, period. But that doesn't mean I can't be aware of what's going on statistically and know there's a problem, right? You and I talked about the other day, was that yesterday? Serial killers. Maybe that was Renee. The majority of serial killers are white. That's just a fact, Pat. Does that make me uncomfortable? Yeah. Does that make me maybe even a little embarrassed? Yeah. Maybe even a little shameful? Yeah. But every person has the right to say that out loud because that's the truth. And if we can't talk about that, we can't ever figure out how to fix those issues. We have
But what does this have to do with racism? That's what I'm trying to get back to. What does this have to do with racism itself?
Because you can't even talk. Because what Black Lives Matter did was it created a false narrative that blacks are being attacked. Every terrible thing that's happening in the world is because they're black. Black Lives Matter. What does that mean? It means what they're implying is that black lives don't matter. And they do. And they always have. The entire Democratic Party got behind this. And we made it seem like everyone's out to get them. So now now so many people have such hatred in their hearts against white people, against police. I watch these.
So let me interrupt you because I feel like
Sure.
Yeah. So I think we have to differentiate when you talk about Black Lives Matter. You have the organization and you have the movement.
Sure.
And I think those are two different pieces. And a lot of people put them together.
Now, for the sake of this, they are one and the same.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
this is where I disagree because I think when we put them together, you're grouping people and they're not necessarily for both. So I am not for the Black Lives Matter organization. I believe, when a lot of this happened, a lot of that, they raised all that money and that money went nowhere. And it was, you can read reports of how that money, where it was supposed to help organizations and stuff, and a lot of it was just went into pockets of people. The movement, I do agree with, because when we talk about crime, our criminal justice system has not done the African American community any favors. I think we have made progress. We have gotten better. Anyone that says that the criminal justice system is worse than it was before I think that's ridiculous. We have made progress.
Absolutely.
Are we there? Are we perfect? No. But I think as long as we're making progress, we can say, hey, we're doing okay. But the issue is that we've seen, the African American community has seen, is where there have been crimes that they have been unjustly prosecuted for versus whites. You look at cocaine and crack. Cocaine, they called the white man's drug. Crack was more of the African American drug. But when you looked at how they were, penalized, cocaine was, and crack, where if you're charged with crack, you were going to jail or you were prosecuted a lot more heavily than if you got caught with cocaine. Same
because
drug.
It was much more dangerous. The law was created because it was much more dangerous. It was irrelevant of who was using
Crack
it. It's just that it was a side effect that black people happen to use it more. That's all that was.
I disagree. Both drugs are just as bad.
They're not just as bad. That's the whole reason. You're telling me you're far worse.
You're telling me crack is worse than cocaine?
Absolutely. That's the whole point. That's why it was so much more dangerous. That's why they were trying to stop this thing. Now it just happened to be that more black people used crack. That just
I don't know. I mean, I would put them as both equally dangerous, in my opinion. Not that I've done them.
Okay. Yeah. And it's been a long time since I've done a deep dive into either one of those things, right? Absolutely.
I also, I think that one thing that has come good out of the Black Lives Matter or this whole is the police brutality is we have body cameras, because I believe that, like, Rodney King, if there wasn't someone taking a video of that, we would have never known, because I do believe there was a lot of crime. We have a lot of great cops, but there are are bad cops out there.
And I'll be tempted to say real quick that the majority of the bad guys you're interacting with, there's a lot of real bad guys there. The ratio isn't even close to the same.
Fair. Yeah. We're in agreement there, but I do believe that there was a lot of crimes because police officers in general were kind of propped up as like they can do no wrong. And once we started having cell phones and videos, it's like, wait a second, that doesn't look right. That doesn't, and so now we have police have body cameras. That way there is no like, his word against mine, because who's the judge going to take? Are they going to take the judge of the so-called criminal, or the word of the so-called criminal, or are they going to take the word of the so-called police officer? Well, of course they're going to take the police officer.
Sure.
But really, what is what are the qualifications to be a police officer these days? Really, you have to go to police academy. There's no degree. Not saying you need one, but like it's, these people aren't necessarily, going in. Maybe they're not the best people in the world. Maybe we need to be more selective in who becomes law enforcement. I think there's a lot.
I would disagree with that, because when you say that, you're implying that we have big, massive problems across the board. We don't. That's been proven that it's just not true. That's the problem with all of this, right? If we bring it back real quick to the Roland Fryer, by the way. Roland Fryer is who I was thinking of. Roland Fryer did a study a couple of years back on police brutality. He's a black guy, right? He did this year-long study of police departments, police brutality, and he went in, right, ready to get them. He went in guns blazing, in his own words, right? Because he was going to show how terrible police officers were, right? What he found was the polar opposite. What he found, there was so little out there that he realized the whole thing was a lie. The entire thing. He was so shocked. He hired a whole brand new set of researchers, and they did it all again for another year. Same result. That man is absolutely loathed by most of the Democratic Party now for telling the truth about what's really happening in our police departments.
No, I don't think anyone's disputing that.
Oh,
I
they
do.
certainly are. That's the whole point. Of course they are. Black Lives Matter. No, that doesn't make sense.
No. I'm just saying in general. Like I do believe that there's probably more violence against police officers in general than police
By a
officers.
long
Yeah,
shot.
yeah. So
Not even
we're on the same
close.
page
Yeah.
with there. But
And real quick, back to the movement, right? If Black Lives Matter existed in the most healthy, honest way, Black Lives Matter is going to help fix communities, fix families, do whatever they can to start figuring out how to fix this issue.
nah, I disagree. I don't think we can sit here and dictate what a movement should be focused on. I don't think that's fair. I just
Well,
think
you're talking about the differences in the movement versus the other piece. What I'm saying is there's a healthy version of Black Lives Matter, and that's being honest about what's going wrong in the Black community so you can fix it. Now, that's a very healthy thing right there, but
Yeah.
it's not that. It's saying Black Lives Matter because whites are out to get you and police are out to get you. And it's the most first thing from the possible truth. It's not even vaguely close, period.
all I'm saying is I don't think it's fair for us to, even though I don't agree with where the money is going and how that works, I just don't think we can sit here and say, oh, well, you should be, hey, you organization, yeah, I don't like, I think you should be focused on this. You
No,
know,
I'm
just
just
like,
telling you,
I'm-
that's what would make me
it's like
appreciate it.
for, oh,
That's what I'm-
that's
yeah,
fair.
yeah,
but,
it's not
I
quite
mean,
that.
but
What
like
I'm
a
saying,
veterans,
if it was because it's what it stands for is everyone's out to get you, and now everything bad that happens to your life is because of the color of skin. That's disgusting and it's completely untrue. If they were talking about real problems that were actually happening to Black people and helping figure those things through, that would be phenomenal.
Hold on a second. But
I would join
But there
in
is
a heartbeat.
Hold on, time out. But there is issues with police brutality against African Americans. Just because it's on a smaller scale doesn't mean it's not happening.
Oh, sure, but the
So-
majority, the issues are Black on police crime. That's where the real problem is, and we're not even talking about it. You'll get canceled, you get fired, they'll take your clearance, they'll take everything from you.
But that's what they're not focused on that though. And
exactly.
But that's my point with it is I don't think it's fair for us or anyone to tell an organization that's funded what they should spend money on. So like for veterans, if I wanted to start a veterans advocacy fund group and I wanted to focus on let's say veterans coming back from war, getting them jobs, and someone's like, oh, but what about veteran suicide? Isn't that horrible? Yeah, but like, oh, well, I don't respect you. Like I don't think you can still focus on a very issue that may be very small, but I mean, do you see where I'm going? I just don't think we can sit here and tell them, well, yeah, that's just not a big issue. You should be focused on this. That's how I think. Who are we to tell them what they should be worried about?
You say that, but the result is we're creating an endless amount of children and adults that hate the color of my skin now, who hate the color of my son's skin now, who hate one of my best friends who's a police officer. They hate and they loathe him.
But who's
That's
they?
the result. People who have been indoctrinated into the cult of Black Lives Matter.
This is where I disagree.
Okay.
I don't believe that everyone that agrees with it believes that. Like,
Not
I mean,
everyone, I'm sure, but that's the whole narrative behind it. We're saying that the society says Black lives don't matter, so we're here to show that that they do matter. That's not what's happening in the slightest. That's not true in the slightest. And because of that, we're creating this victim mentality that says, if I get in trouble by the police, it's the white man's fault. If I get arrested, it's the police officer's fault. And it's in everything that goes wrong in their life, it's because someone had a problem with the color of my skin. Someone bumps into me, it's because they're racist. Are you kidding me? I don't get a job, it's because they're racist. That's the effect. You say it's not fair. What's not fair is the effect that this poison has on our society. We can't talk about the problems, and we can't talk about the problem that the majority of serial killers are white. Can't fix anything. Period.
Well, but no one's saying you can't talk about it.
You're wrong, Pat. That's where you're wrong. The majority of jobs will terminate you if they find you say anything vaguely like that truth right there.
Oh, okay.
That's
Well,
America currently right now. So that's what I mean. You say
No,
it's
okay,
not fair, the organization, it's not fair what's happening in this country. It's not fair that if my son and a Black kid got into a fight, it would probably be on the news saying white kid punches black kid. That's what's not fair, Pat. Irrelevant of how it went down, irrelevant of anything else. My son's going to get death threats. He's going to get attacked. We might have riots in the streets. Irrelevant of how it began and what the details are. You want to talk about what's not fair? That's not fair. Society can't afford to be fair if it means allowing organizations to lie about the truth of what's going on and destroying people's sense of reality because of it.
Sure. I totally understand your point.
So let's go into a couple examples of some of the really insane stuff kind of going on, right? And as I go through these few things, just think about what would it be if it was reversed, right? Would it be okay? Would nobody be talking about it, or would it be on the news every single night? Race to Dinner Company. You heard of them?
Mm-mm.
The Race to Dinner. It's a dinner party where white people are confronted and expected to discuss their racism and white privilege. I think that ironically, it's I researched this before Matt Walsh's movie, Am I Racist? I know we haven't seen that, but there's a big scene where Matt Walsh is pretending to work at this dinner, and these two people are talking to all these white women and just telling them how horrible they are. That's it, Race to Dinner. When we watch this movie, we're going to be able to see this in action. You know, phrases like, you can't separate yourself from the bad white people.
Okay, so this is
poison.
You know, and we've talked about this because when we watched, what was the movie that the other movie did? What is a Woman?
What is a Woman?
Yeah, so and this
Phenomenal,
is where I kind of go back to what we talked about in the very beginning of this episode, where these are the very, very far end of people. So what we're doing, and this is, I do like Matt Walsh, especially what he stands for. You know, he's the father, and you know, he talks about how this is what I do, but then I go home and I don't even care about this stuff.
Yeah, I'm a family man when I go home.
I just think that we can sit here and cherry pick crazies from both sides, but it doesn't. I don't believe that it holistically is what the whole everyone stands for. So it's kind of, we talk about.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
So
we
can agree that
even talk about what we really stand for. Just swap this around. Imagine if this was called, this company, Race to Dinner, was me and you, Pat. Me and you start our own Race to Dinner, where people pay thousands of dollars, black people, thousands of dollars to sit down, and we tell them how horrible and racist and evil they are. Do you think America would be silent as they are with this?
Agreed.
Exactly. That's harm right there. That's poison again for society. So Race to Dinner, right? That's begun in 2019 by Regina Jackson and Syra Rao. I apologize if I got either one of those dirtbags' names wrong. Disgusting racist human beings. All right, so here's a great one, right? University of California, Berkeley, off-campus housing, no whites allowed in common spaces. Imagine that. Imagine, right? No blacks allowed in common spaces in a white fraternity. You know, imagine such a thing.
Oh yeah, no, it's ridiculous. Yes.
And again, you want to talk about creating racism. We're saying it's okay to hate someone for the color of their skin. It's not okay. It's never okay. And if anybody watching this thinks everything I've said about black people thinks that I think that's okay for a second, not in any universe whatsoever. Judge people by who they are. Judge them by their merit. That's it. Period. You know, if college was telling my son that it was okay to ban black people from your room, how's that going to affect him in his life? He's being taught by the people in charge that it's okay to hate someone, right? Because of the color of their skin, to discriminate because of the color of their skin.
No, agreed. And this kind of makes me think about the whole issue we had, with Israel and Palestine. It's like how these universities have allowed it's all of these, Hamas supporters,
terrorist supporters,
terrorists, and where it's like allowed to sit on campus and do the no Jews allowed and stuff. I mean, are we? I mean, is Hitler back in charge? I mean, how are we allowing these presidents of these universities allowing this to even happen? It's despicable, and especially when we talking about these are the people that want equal rights, but literally supporting the people that, like women, gays, have zero rights over there. and allowing this to happen. It's despicable.
Oh yeah, and we may need an entire episode just for the Palestine-Israel conflict, because there's so much to that. But it was a Harvard poll recently, and I think if I remember correctly, the stat was, I may be off by a couple percentage here, 56% of aged 18 to 24 Harvard people who took the poll support what Hamas did.
And clearly, they have not.
You imagine that. One out of every two children.
History book.
Imagine that. You send your kid off to college, you don't know. And they come out, they're a radical. They think it's okay to rape, murder, and mutilate in the worst shit humanly possible. All right, so now there are dozens of different examples of these type of things going on. Pure anti-white and now anti-Jewish racism, hatred in America. There's another one that stood out to me. The Elected People of Color Christmas Party, Boston, Massachusetts. A yearly event for city council people of color only. Basically, approximately half the council of 13 people are people of color. No whites allowed. Hosted by the mayor. The mayor. Imagine living in Boston and your mayor throws parties for everyone but white people. That person, can you imagine that in America right now? What are we doing? We're saying it's okay.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous.
To hate white people. It's okay to hate Jewish people. But if it's, again, I keep using the word poison, this stuff was happening. My struggle is, as we went through, right, there are some huge things, huge issues with the Republican Party, right? Big problems in which it makes it very difficult for me to ever possibly vote Trump, right? I couldn't do it. I physically couldn't do it. The problem is the majority of all the bad stuff happening in our country, in society, it's all coming from the Democrat side. Well, all the stuff I'm talking about, all the poisonous, destructive stuff in society, it's all on the Democrat side.
And I feel that, I really feel that what's happening is because, African Americans have been were not treated fairly for years. And we talk about that's why we had.
Yeah, but we're not talking even in our lifetimes.
Well, hear me out. Hear me out. So, that's why we had the Civil Rights Movement, Martin Luther King Jr. Say what?
Oh, in our lifetimes for the most part.
Yeah, no, but my point is, I think what we have done is we've tried to overcorrect. And so
combat racism with racism.
Yeah,
that's really what we're doing.
So instead of just recognizing we did wrong and doing better, it's almost like we've got to where, okay, well, now we have to kind of do the opposite in order to get even. And I just don't think we can be an effective society like that, because now we're fighting evil with evil. And what we need to do is recognize we did wrong. We're making progress, but we should not be sitting here and saying, okay, it's okay, we can do this because you guys did this before. It's not the right answer.
Ancestors
had
absolutely. Racism, we believe it's okay to create new racism.
No,
when you yourselves have never more than likely experienced any of that during your life. But that's okay. We're gonna, it's okay for to hate against white, to hate against people who are different, right? Yeah, it's destructive, man. Yeah. It's destructive. And I hear what you're saying, but the reality is there has to be a point in America when we need to move on. We have to say the past is the past. We have created program after program after program that benefited one race above all. That was not white people. That's gone on for too long. Has that been helpful? That has not at all. We have the worst violence we've ever had. We've had the worst racism towards whites we've ever had. We have so much. It doesn't work. What we're doing is not working. The Democratic Party creates a victim and an oppressor narrative in everything that they do. And we're creating one where the whites are the oppressors. The Jews are the oppressors. It has to stop. It's not real, and it's destructive. You and I have kids, man, right?
Yeah.
How brutal is that? It's one thing, I told you, I've lost multiple people in my life for this poison. I had a program, I think I've showed you I was working on a while back, called the Life Force Project, where I was incorporating all these different healthy mental and physical methodologies. I created a 60-page document, kind of starter thing. And the whole point was to kind of help fix society by working on ourselves and on our families, right? And then by extension, kind of working outwards because of it. I created this and I was so proud of it. And I was so happy to share it with people because it made such a benefit, such a difference in my life. And I was sharing with people who they weren't doing any of that stuff, right? The benefit was enormous. I was talking to an old friend of mine about this, an old buddy of mine. We used to work together, Pentagon, for years, right? And I'm telling him about it, and he gets all quiet, and he says, "Well, that might be a problem, Micah." What? What do you mean might be a problem? Because of your pigment. I said, what? He said, yeah, it's not really acceptable in this day and age for people of your complexion to tell others how to live their lives.
We weren't telling anyone how to live their life.
Shit.
You were giving examples of how.
Physical and mental wellness, daily rituals that you can do to be the best version of you. And all he heard.
And I'm sure none of it had to do with raising the KKK flag or anything like that.
There's not one bit of race in there. It doesn't exist. That program is irrelevant of crap like that. But he said, because of the color of my skin, I was wrong. How dare I? You imagine that, right? That's the poison in our country right now, right? I'll give you another example, right? I had a job, it was a couple jobs back, and I had a new boss. I had a friend of mine who we'd worked together for years, and we had a new boss that had come in. The new boss, while this other person was out, was basically disparaging her behind her back. So while she was out teleworking, as she was supposed to, he was telling everybody that she was a useless, terrible employee. When I heard this myself, I thought, how dare you? How dare you? This woman, my coworker, right? She has no idea that you're talking crap about her just because she teleworks sometimes. It's part of her agreement. Are you kidding me? That was before you ever came here. I was so shocked that this was going on because it was so unprofessional. I drove an hour and a half to meet her for lunch. Okay, so this ends up being a 3+ hour trip. And I sat down with this person, right? Someone who, again, I thought was my friend, or at the very least, a very strong coworker. And I told her, and she's a black girl, and I told her what was said about her. She sits back, and you know what she says out loud? Talking about the boss, the new boss. She says, these white boys and their privilege. It's disgusting.
Was she referencing you?
The boss. I was blown away. She said, and I said, I don't think it has anything to do with race. And she said, what else could it be? What other reason could he have a problem with me? And I thought, can you imagine? Can you imagine, Pat? I have been a great worker and I've been a terrible worker and everything in between during my life. I think I'm pretty decent now, right? Can you imagine if a boss was upset at me for something and I thought it must be because they're racist? It couldn't be anything else.
What was the reason?
Whatsoever.
What do you think the reason why the boss was upset at her?
Well, it's kind of irrelevant, but it has nothing to do with race. I just don't want to bring too much into it.
Okay, got it. So there was other issues going on.
Yeah, he was concerned that she was not doing her job properly and was talking bad about her, not to her face, so she had no idea it was going on, which was very unprofessional. Talking to her coworkers, yeah. So yeah, she yeah. A couple of weeks later, I told her, I took her aside, I said, I just want to let you know how uncomfortable that made me, because I was really in shock at that time. I couldn't believe it when I drove home, hour and a half each way, Pat. And to her, to say something like that, how disgusting. White boys and their privilege. I drove 3 hours to look out for her. And you know what? While during this was going, she said, you know what? I'm glad you shared it because he was talking crap about you the other day too. I thought, wow, where was my heads up? I didn't get one. But the guy who gave you a heads up, you have a problem with people the color of his skin. Wow.
But did she say she had an issue with you?
Well, that's the whole point. If I had an issue with her, right, it would be because I'm a racist. There's no other reason for it.
Okay.
That's the whole point.
Well, I guess that's why
yeah.
that's why I was asking, like, was there some other issue, or was it fair for her to assume that?
Of course not. You can't just assume a boss has a problem with you. It's because he's racist. It's disgusting. And she assumed that. Why? Simply because he was white. Because she's all in the Black Lives Matter. She's been warped into thinking every bad thing that happens is because someone of color my skin. Right? A couple weeks later, I let her know. I said, hey, I don't want to cause any big trouble or be a big thing, but you and I have worked together for a couple of years now, and we've always had a phenomenal relationship. I was very hurt when you brought race into it after I drove 3 hours to look out for you.
Yeah.
You know what she said? She burst into laughter. She couldn't stop laughing, Pat. I can't believe you'd be offended by that. She couldn't understand how that was wrong in any way.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? That made it difficult to ever work with her ever again after that. You want to talk about a horrible feeling, knowing that someone has a problem with me for real because of the color of my skin. And if I say anything, they're going to call me a racist and everything else under the sun. Yeah. So I guess kind of just to wrap this kind of piece up is. So it's a bit of a struggle, right? Who do we want to win the 2024 election? If Kamala Harris wins, Kamala Harris, I would call the most radical possible president we've ever had, period. If you look back, she's as radical as they come. She's changed all her views now, everything she claims to stand for, because she's trying to trick everybody into voting for her. But, she let, what was it, 8+ million people over the border in 3 years. I don't know how you're not in prison for the rest of your life for that. How many people actually died?
Let's be fair.
She was the border. That's her job.
Yeah,
she was the border.
But she had
no assigned to it.
Hold on,
she
wait a
go
second.
For 3 years.
I'm not disputing any of that. I just don't think it's fair to judge her when she wasn't the president.
She was in charge of the border, irrelevant of being the president.
But she was not. But the vice president cannot put in executive actions. The vice president has. What are they? They're there if the president, something happens to the president. I'm not. She was part of. Wait.
Just because you're not the president, you can be put in charge of something and have no responsibility if it goes wrong. That doesn't sound right.
That's not what I'm saying.
I feel like that's what you're saying.
No, what I'm saying is that we can't, like, she was Joe Biden's vice president, so we can put her and attach her to all Joe Biden's policies all we want, but she was not. She did not have any authority. She did not have the.
I think you don't give her enough credit, Pat. You're kind of saying like she's just mute and can't see, can't hear, can't do anything.
No.
And therefore we can't hold her accountable for anything.
We can. It's just we can't pile it all on her. That's all.
But
I'm
I
saying.
think I can pile a good amount of it on.
That's
her.
Fair. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right. So if we go back to who I am at least hoping wins the presidency, I'm very, very, very conflicted. If you've heard everything I've said so far, I think you'd understand that I have real issues with both parties right now. But again, all the most destructive things in society right now, what's ripping our society apart, ripping friends apart, ripping coworkers apart, ripping family members apart, it's all coming from the Democrat side. All of it, as far as I'm concerned. None of the stuff that Trump's doing affects me, nor did it then. That's the whole thing, right? So it's very difficult for me. I guess my struggle is that I do not have faith that Trump, and I know he doesn't truly live the values of the Republican Party, right? If he did, I believe he wouldn't have tacked DeSantis every single chance he got, for example. Those two should have worked hand in hand to figure out how to get this country in a better place.
Nikki
he doesn't
Haley
represent. Nikki Haley is an absolute dirtbag.
Oh,
Are you kidding me? So when Ron DeSantis was trying to protect children from Disney, from their poison, she said, "Go ahead and come. You can bring it. Come on here, Disney." Right? Yes, so that's another. We got enough Democrats trying to mutilate our children. We do not need a Republican doing it. That's what I have to say about Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley sounds good. She's going to mutilate your kids, Pat. I'm not ever going down that path. So anyway, real quick. So it's very difficult because I don't believe if Trump's in charge, I do not believe that he will actually fix things in the way that he needs to. I just don't believe it. I don't believe it for 1 second. I believe it's going to be a random crapshoot. There's no telling. There'll be good, there'll be bad. There's just no telling at all. But I can tell you one thing I do know for sure. He will continue to radicalize the Democratic Party like no one's business. And in 4 years, we won't have dirtbag Kamala. We're going to have Gavin Newsom, the slickest, slimiest scumbag salesman you've ever met, who is beloved by the Democratic Party. He's going to get elected, Pat. That's what's going to happen. If we get Trump, we don't get a man who truly represents our morals and our values. But more than that, right? He continues to now influence every other Republican primary and election for the rest of his life because he got reelected again. That's the problem. It becomes the party of Trump after that. Again, he's just not going to solve anything. I don't believe it for 1 second. And in the end, the Democrats are going to come back stronger than ever. So now, if we go the other route, if Kamala gets reelected, I believe that we will see everything I talked about, the poison in society, we're going to see that ramped up twice, 3 times, 5 times, right? It's going to be absolutely brutal. The worst shit possible. But you know what it's going to do? It's going to radicalize the world, radicalize the right against her, period. And then Trump, more than likely, he's not going to run again in 4 years. It means it's going to be someone like dirtbag Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis, for example. What I'm saying is, and I say dirtbag, right? You could do worse,
So what you're saying is you would rather the Democrats win?
It's a hard thing for me, Pat. But I think the worst thing that can happen for the Republican Party is if Trump wins, he becomes the Republican Party, and he guarantees the Democrats take it for 8 years after that. If he loses, we get someone else in 4 years who's not Trump, who might actually live even half of the values that the Republican Party holds. And at that point, maybe we can get back to healthy sanity. So it is the hardest thing ever for me, but for the future of this country, for the future of the Republican Party, for the future of my son and all those people I don't know in the world, I need the Republicans to lose this election so we can get a man or woman of honor in 4 years and put this country back in a good, healthy place.
So it sounds like we're both on the same page with that.
But I won't vote Kamala. That I could never do. That would be, for me, there'd be a part of me that would never recover from that. I hold myself so accountable.
Well, here's the thing, though. Due to how we vote and stuff, our votes really don't matter.
Oh, when the Democratic Party just assigns.
Oh no. Well, not only it comes down to is we live in Virginia. Virginia is gonna more than likely vote blue, no matter if we go and vote or not. It's going to come down to this election. It's going to come down to Pennsylvania. It's going to come down to Georgia. It's going to come down to Michigan. It's going to come down to Wisconsin. Those 4 states are going to determine who wins this election. So really, we can sit here and talk about it, but really, we're not going to make a difference in our state. But hopefully.
Well, hopefully we keep doing this podcast, Pat, and we get better at just communicating. For all we've talked about, kind of like I was talking about in one of our breaks, I feel like I'm a terrible communicator still. The way in which I organize my thoughts out loud are just atrocious compared to what I hope that will be, in a few months or a few years' time. So for all that I've struggled through in this talk here, right, in our podcast, if I offended you, I did not mean to. If I put you in a bad place, I promise it was not meant in any way. This podcast, the words that come out of my mouth they come out with love and care and respect. And only if we truly talk about what's going on in America do we ever have a chance to fix it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys again for listening, and you'll see us again next episode.
Like, comment, subscribe, and that's it.
That's it.